Hello everyone, welcome to Bioworks. Our topic for today is photosynthesis. This is a chapter of grade 10 ICSE board and in today's video I'm going to cover the phases of photosynthesis. Students of grade 10 CBSE board can also refer to this topic. So let's begin. So before starting with today's topic, that is photosynthesis, we should first understand the basic structure of chloroplast because it is the site of photosynthesis. So let us draw the structure and understand the various parts of chloroplast, right? So we know that chloroplast is a green colored plastid that is present in the plants and it is found in the mesophyll cells of the plants, right? Mesophyll cells are the cells that are present in the leaves where exactly the process of photosynthesis takes place, and this is how the chloroplast looks like. So we're going to see each and every part labeled here now. We'll start with the membrane. As you can see, it is a double membranous structure. So this is the outer membrane, all right, and then you have the inner membrane. So chloroplast is surrounded by a double membranous covering, and inside the chloroplast there is this ground substance. This ground substance is called as stroma. All right. So this is called as stroma. Now this stroma consists of the ribosomes. All right. So let me show the ribosomes here. It also has presence of the DNA. As we know that chloroplast is a cell organelle that has its own DNA. It is a self-replicating cell organelle, right? Along with mitochondria. So it has got its own DNA, it has own ribosomes as well. And you can see here these flat disc-like structures. These flat disc-like structures are called as thylakoids. So let me label that here. This is called as a thylakoid. And in the membrane of these thylakoids, chlorophyll is present. So I'm going to mention chlorophyll over here. And chlorophyll is a green colored structure present in the chloroplast. All right. So chlorophyll is present in the walls of the thylakoids where the process of photosynthesis begins. Fine. And of course, the process also continues in the stroma, the ground substance. I'm going to explain that in some time. But right now, understand that chlorophyll is an important pigment here, which is responsible for photosynthesis, and it is present inside the membrane of the thylakoid. All right. And if you observe, the thylakoids are placed one above the other to form a stack, and this stack is called as a granum. So let me label that over here. So let's say this entire stack is called as a granum. All right. So you can see there are several grana present inside the stroma of the chloroplast, and they are all connected to each other. You can see there is an interconnecting bar between two grana. So this interconnecting bar is called as fret, or it is also called as lamella or lamellae. All right. So they are also called as interconnecting lamellae or simply fret. They connect the two grana together. Fine. So that is how the basic structure of chloroplast looks like. And now we will go into details of exactly how the process of photosynthesis takes place and what are light and the dark phases. So the process of photosynthesis occurs in two phases. First phase is a light dependent phase and the other one is light independent phase. All right. Now the light dependent phase is also called as a photochemical phase, and light independent phase is also called as biosynthetic phase. All right. biosynthetic or dark phase rather. Fine. Now, light dependent phase, as the name suggests, this phase is totally dependent on sunlight, and it is called as photochemical because the chemical reactions occur in presence of sunlight. And light independent phase is called so because it is not dependent on light, and it is called as biosynthetic because biosynthesis of glucose takes place. And the term dark phase can be sometimes misleading because dark phase does not mean that it occurs only in the dark, just that it is not dependent on sunlight. So it is better to call it as light independent phase rather than dark phase. All right. Now we'll write on the site where exactly these two phases take place. So light dependent phase occurs in the thylakoids. All right, thylakoids are green colored flat disc shaped structures present in the chloroplast. We just now studied the structure. And light independent phase occurs in the stroma. Stroma is the ground substance present in the chloroplast, right? So this is the site of these phases. Now we'll go into details of what exactly happens in the phase. So we'll start with the light dependent phase first. So there are two important processes that occur in the light dependent phase. One is the activation of chlorophyll. Activation of chlorophyll. And what do you mean by activation of chlorophyll here is that the chlorophyll absorbs photons. Photons are units of light energy. So chlorophyll absorbs the photons and gets activated. And once it gets activated, it releases energy-rich electron, right? So let's assume that this is the chlorophyll molecule. And once it absorbs the photons, it gets activated, that is, it releases electrons, right? That is called as activation of chlorophyll. This is the first important step under light dependent phase. And the second step that occurs is splitting of water. Splitting of water, which is called as photolysis. All right. If you break the word photolysis, you will understand that photo meaning light and lysis meaning breakdown. So breakdown or splitting of water molecule that occurs in presence of light is called as photolysis. So let me write down the reaction here. So water molecule splits into its components, the hydrogen ions, electrons are released, and oxygen is also released. This is the reaction indicating photolysis, right? Let me just slide this up a bit. All right. Now, the hydrogen that is released in photolysis, you can see here 4H plus, right? So hydrogen is picked up by a compound called as NADP, which stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. It accepts hydrogen and gets converted into NADPH, which is the reduced form of NADP. All right. So in the light dependent phase, we saw that first the chlorophyll molecule gets activated, water molecule splits, and when water molecule splits into its components, the hydrogen that are released, they are accepted by NADP to form NADPH. Then this would be the first compound that is formed in the light dependent phase. Then let's write down the next step. Oxygen is released as molecular oxygen. So I'm going to write it as it is. This is molecular oxygen. This is another product of light dependent phase. And the third thing that happens is ADP is converted into ATP using electrons. Now, the electrons you can see here, these electrons that are released from photolysis, these electrons will be used in converting adenosine diphosphate to adenosine triphosphate. All right, so this will be another product of light dependent phase, ATP. And this process is also called as photophosphorylation. Photophosphorylation. All right. Photo because it occurs in presence of sunlight. Phosphorylation meaning addition of phosphate to form ATP. So here we saw in the light dependent phase NADPH is produced and oxygen is released and ATP is also produced. Now both NADPH and ATP, these are used in the dark reaction, that is in the light independent reaction. Let us see how. So I'm going to show light independent reaction on the right hand side here. Uh, there's a compound called as RUBP, which stands for ribulose bisphosphate. This is an acceptor of carbon dioxide. All right, so it accepts carbon dioxide and fixes into glucose, which is C6H12O6. All right, so this is the molecular formula of glucose. So ribulose bisphosphate accepts carbon dioxide. So basically carbon dioxide fixation occurs here and glucose is being produced. Now for fixation of carbon dioxide, hydrogen is required and hydrogen is provided by NADPH, right? So I'm going to write that down here. Both NADPH and ATP are required in the dark phase. You can see here NADPH and ATP, they are utilized in the light independent phase. They are the products of light dependent phase, but they are utilized in the light independent phase. NADPH provides hydrogen for fixation of carbon dioxide. As we know, glucose has got hydrogen as well. So hydrogen is provided by NADPH and ATP is an energy source, of course, right? So the enzyme that is used for this particular process, that is the dark reaction, the enzyme used is Rubisco. I'm going to write that down here. So Rubisco is the enzyme used for the process, and Rubisco stands for ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase. This is one of the most abundant enzyme in the plants, and it helps in fixation of carbon dioxide into glucose, right? That is how glucose is being formed in the process of photosynthesis, and later on glucose molecules, they combine to form molecule of starch in a process called as polymerization, and that is required because glucose cannot be stored in the plants as it is. It has to be converted into starch in order to store it. All right, so that is how the process of photosynthesis occurs in plants, and I have explained light dependent as well as light independent phase. I hope that was quite clear to you. Thank you.